Hey everyone, so I just want to start off by saying that I actually somewhat enjoy the content put out by RockingMrE, especially in dissecting Marxism in philosophy. I think that he overuses the term socialist to the point of absurdity, but other than that his content is alright. But recently in my Discord server, people have been showing me this video and requested me to do a response to it, so I took a look at it, and this video is so fucking bad that I'm almost considering unsubscribing to his channel over it. So without further ado, let's take a look. Oh wait, before we start, here's the most autistic thing I've ever read that I found in the comment section posted by none other than Sargon of Akkad himself.
Instead of leftists, I think we should just call them what they are, Marxists. Great video, by the way. I got some choice Hayek quotes for anyone silly enough to claim that the welfare state is collectivist or that regulating a market is economic planning.
Uh-oh, retard alert! Retard alert!
Yep, because apparently individualism applied more consistently than you apply it is Marxism now. Only because it calls you out for your inconsistency, presumably. Also, Friedrich Hayek literally is famous for writing a book about how economic state programs lead to despotism and the degradation of society. Literally, the book is called The Road to Serfdom. So I don't know what you quote mined, but there is no way that you could spin Hayek into a supporter of the welfare state, and the fact that you've even tried is a testament to how much of a faux intellectual you are. Eat my ass, Sargon, I can't believe I ever took you seriously at one point. Anyway, on to the video.
Lolbertarians aren't libertarians.
But wait, the thumbnail of this video is you attacking so-called Lolbertarians for using the exact same argument that you just used against them. So are you saying that you're the Lolbertarian?
Once again, I find myself pointing out how a movement has been corrupted by leftist infiltration.
Nigga what?
If you don't know the subversion tactics by now, you either haven't been paying attention or you're part of the problem.
Yeah, so in case you aren't familiar with RockingMrE's videos, he uses the terms leftist and state advocate interchangeably. He's pretty much on the mark for the most part, but nothing about principled individualist anarchism even remotely fits either of these definitions. In fact, the political spectrum is meaningless, as RockingMrE has pointed out rather beautifully in one of his own videos, but even according to the political spectrum, the economic right advocates for free markets and the economic left advocates for collectivism. What about individualists who reject voting and other forms of statism in favor of attempting to achieve their political goals through alternative means which don't require coercion? What about that is inconsistent with libertarianism? In fact, if anyone here is a Lolbertarian attempting to subvert libertarianism and individualist ideology, it's you and try-hard edgy reactionaries like Christopher Cantwell or Love Life and Anarchy who advocate for using the state to create strong border control and violate the right of free association and economic regulations. Yeah, you call yourselves libertarians, as in people who question the legitimacy of the state and claim to be skeptical of its authority, yet you believe that the state creating an artificial line, declaring that no one can cross it, and enforcing that by stealing the money of people who live within those lines that it declares, that's justified.
I first brought attention to this back in 2014. People like Stefan Molyneux and Christopher Cantwell have also done this.
And the same Lolbertarians who advocate for statism also say the same things about the same people calling them out for their inconsistencies. Sounds to me like there's a bit of psychological projection going on here.
But in particular, it's been the 2016 US election that's truly exposed this division.
Let's vote for Donald Trump because he promises to get rid of regulation, is anti-war, and claims to be critical of the deep state.
But we've had politicians claim all of the exact same things before, from all across the ideological spectrum, and they've all lied. Look, I say we remain principally consistent, continue trying to undermine the state by working around it, and not give in to the illusion of choice created by democracy, and by extension conform to the notion that the state has any authority over us. And once again, history has completely vindicated us for remaining consistent. Meanwhile, you're stuck with what effectively amounts to nothing more than Obama with an R next to his name. I do hope it was worth selling your standards down the river.
This has led to imposters using a warped standard of ideological purity to prevent libertarians from making progress in the real world.
Well, which one is it? Is our understanding of what libertarianism actually stands for twisted and inconsistent with what it actually represents? Or are we a bunch of dogmatic purists? Make up your mind, because we can't be both. Better yet, I can answer that for you. I'm neither dogmatic, nor are any of my standards inconsistent with libertarianism. I'm simply a principled individualist, and my criticism of people like yourself is merely that you compromise your principles, which, in the process, makes your position inconsistent with individualist philosophy, despite what you claim. Unfortunately, the individual's rights being held above all else is not compatible with any form of coercion, because coercion by its very nature violates this concept, because coercion is a violation of the individual's rights. If you don't believe in this concept, then your ideology is not individualist. It's as simple as that, a relatively black and white concept. So all someone like myself is doing when I say that your ideology is inconsistent is simply pointing out that your ideology is inconsistent. And you want to talk about the real world. I and others like myself seek to decentralize the economy using a currency which provably cannot be restricted by the state due to its blockchain network, creating a self-sustaining zero-trust economy that can't be regulated by outside influences. And since this cryptocurrency is inherently more valuable than fiat, because its value is determined by its scarcity, since only a certain amount can exist at any given time, and its utility derived from the size and amount of network usage it has, meaning it's also profitable, so more than just libertarians will trade using counter-economics. The expansion of the counter-economy will lead to increased capital invested in it, which will create social infrastructure completely untouchable by the state, which will be more profitable, efficient, and cheaper inherently, since it operates on a competitive and exclusively private market with a currency that's value isn't nothing. Then people will eventually stop paying taxes altogether, because the state at this point will be nothing more but a parasite off of your income. And you have these hundreds of private security firms ready to protect their customers if the state even manages to get the funds together to send police after tax resistors without their taxes, effectively innovating the state out of existence. All we need to wait for at this point is another market crash so that people put their assets in crypto in response to their money losing value, and crypto being an asset which isn't affected by the crash ensures that this will happen. So not only can this realistically happen, but it seems more likely that this will happen than anything else. And what's your answer for achieving a libertarian society? Vote. Oh yeah, because that's going to accomplish a lot of things.
We have absolute power over you. Our existence is entirely based on taking property which you've created to sustain ourselves, and we literally have your dick in a vice so tight that you're on your knees begging to us. But you know what? We're sick and tired of it, so you could go ahead and be free now.
Yeah, because that's fucking realism, everybody. That's totally... that's a realistic outcome, according to these people. How exactly are we the Lolbertarians again?
Like conservatives, these Lolbertarians are generally limp-wristed, snide, beaten nerds using moral superiority to hide their sabotage.
Was that ad hominem because none of your claims have any intellectual substance, or because that single claim that we're trying to sabotage libertarianism doesn't have any?
Allow me to explain how this sabotage occurs.
Oh man, you better hold on to your hats, folks. He's about to explain to everyone what I think.
Many libertarians have been attacked by Lolbertarians that take issue with their support of Donald Trump. I know I certainly have, but I will not be naming any of them because, frankly, I won't give them the drama they so desperately crave. So what issues do these Lolbertarians take with someone like me? They claim that I'm not a libertarian because I don't advocate open borders.
No, what libertarians advocate for is no policy on immigration, rather that people migrate from one place to another. The difference being is that we don't believe in any preferential treatment, any state welfare benefits, or anything which could be described as a multicultural policy, which are in reality the cause of all of our issues regarding immigration. Case in point, the United States received millions of immigrants during the early 20th century on an annual basis, and our society did just fine. In fact, the market was stimulated by the growing labor force.
And I'm not an egoist or a social justice warrior co-opting the libertarian label.
Egoists and social justice advocates are entirely separate groups. We're talking about voluntarists, remember? Unless you're trying to say that voluntarists are egoists and social justice advocates, in which case that's some pretty spooky shit, son.
Bear in mind that the reasons Lolbertarians take issue with me aren't necessarily the same as people like Stefan Molyneux and Christopher Cantwell, because, for one, they're both anarcho-capitalists, and I'm better described as a minarchist.
Ah yes, minarchism, that imaginary concept which is only an excuse for statists to advocate for imposing their will onto others and still pretend that they care about freedom. First of all, there is no point at which any state society can be considered minarchist, since what makes a state authoritarian is how it violates our rights and not its scale or size. Therefore, the idea of a small government leaving you alone is a fantasy, since governments inherently violate our rights. They force us into associating with them and claim that we consented despite no such consent ever being given, impose their will onto us by again claiming that we consented, and then initiating violence against us if we disobey despite the fact they can't even prove it. And they steal from us only to provide lower quality services than what can be created voluntarily, and of course to fund their police who will enforce their theft upon people who don't want to give up their property. So no matter what, your right to life, liberty, property, or anything else covered under self-ownership is inherently violated by the state's mere existence. And what a lot of these people don't seem to realize is that a government is nothing more than a monopoly on arbitration. It's an organization which has used violence to keep all competing arbitration out of the market, and from that establishes its rulings as the only rulings, and puts itself above the law, which is why it can do things such as declare itself a ruling class despite the right to self-ownership, or why legislators almost never get held accountable for their crimes unless what the said legislator did would make the government look bad for defending them. I'll make a video going more into detail with my objections to minarchism at a later date, but as for now, let's get back to hearing why voluntarists are Marxists.
I.e., someone that espouses the smallest government possible, with a mandate only to protect the natural freedoms of the individual rather than define or grant freedom.
I've already explained the main problem with this concept, but this is such bullshit, because I know as a matter of fact that you understand the difference between a positive and a negative right. But don't take my word for it, let's hear you yourself explain it.
Human rights, even from the very name they are given, are collectively defined. As I've stated in the past, collective rights are highly problematic because collectivism is an ideology that does not recognize any definition of rights which does not stem from authority. Without authority granting rights, collectivists will deny that anyone has any rights at all. And this makes the individual obligated to the collective for upholding these rights, leading to totalitarianism. Collectivism is also a nihilistic ideology because there is no recognition of rights originating naturally, just like nihilism.
But anyway, we've wasted too much time on the tame section of the video, so let's dive straight off the deep end.
This principle of natural freedom is where I differ the most with Lolbertarians.
That's because your conception of natural rights contradicts itself, which is my biggest issue with classical liberalism. If rights come from the social contract, then rights are not inherent since they need to be positively granted by something. But if rights are inherent, then rights don't need anything external to justify them because they can be justified simply through logical consistency. That's not to say that no one will choose to be criminal. Of course people will, and anyone who says otherwise is either suffering from utopian thinking or is being dangerously naive, which is what most people assume when talking about natural law from an anarchist perspective. No. All we're saying is that you can demonstrate how someone has done something wrong objectively.
Now that this brief summary of the origins of libertarian freedom has been made, it's easier to understand how Lolbertarians subvert this. This occurs in a variety of ways, but the most critical part is undermining the concept of natural rights.
Do you even know what you're talking about? I mean, seriously, I want to assume that you have good intentions, but when you say things like voluntarists are leftists or that voluntarists don't believe in natural rights, I'm inclined to think that you either don't know what we believe, and in which case this video is nothing more than an exercise of throwing your own shit at the wall and hoping that something sticks, which would bring into question your intentions, or you do know what we believe in, and you're deliberately misrepresenting our arguments, in which case you're being malicious. In fact, it's because we believe in natural rights that we reject the state as illegitimate.
A large part of this involves putting all the onus of libertarianism on economics.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
As such, Lolbertarians treat the free market like a religious cult rather than one aspect of libertarianism, albeit an important one.
Okay, now I'm actually beginning to doubt whether or not he knows what he's saying, because I've never heard any voluntarists talk about the free market as if it's a religion or obsess about it to that point. In fact, many individualist anarchists I've run into want to establish private societies to practice alternative economic models, e.g. mutualism or communism. While yes, many of us are laissez-faire and believe that this is the best way for a society to operate under, it's not even a staple in our philosophy.
Like a cult, Lolbertarians rely on magical thinking to defend their beliefs, acting as though all human behaviour can be commoditized into an act of economics.
Give one example of any voluntarist anywhere making an argument that even remotely resembles that.
They also blame the state for every problem to the point of absurdity.
Name one problem which isn't caused by the state, either directly or at its root.
This turns libertarianism into a bad parody where everything can be solved by Adam Smith's invisible hand.
Again, that's not our argument. Plus, Smith isn't even a voluntarist, nor do voluntarists appeal to Smith's ideas because he was a liberal and a classical economist. Classical economists center their ideas around the welfare of the state rather than the economy. Similar to other acts of historical revisionism, classical economists were hardly laissez-faire. In fact, it's not a stretch to say that they were proto-mercantilists. The only thing separating them from mercantilists was that they believed that the state doesn't dictate economic activity. Neoclassical economics are even worse with their support for central banking and the labor theory of value, despite the marginalist revolution disproving the labor theory of value, which was initially what killed off the classical school of economics.
There has to be a moral foundation in place long before we even begin to talk about economics. This explains why the only answer Lolbertarians have for every moral question is the free market or blaming everything on the state. For many Lolbertarians, their only true concern is
Here's the part of the video where he attempts to dissect what people who support the philosophy he's criticizing think, and how they rationalize. This should be good, considering that all he's done so far is construct a giant straw man argument.
making sure they can do whatever they like by rationalizing their narcissism with Adam Smith's invisible hand. They don't want anyone telling them that something is immoral or quite simply wrong. The logical conclusion of this is that these people are basically nihilists or hedonists, essentially the same thing in a logical sense.
No! Absolutely nowhere near the same fucking thing. Nihilists are solipsistic empiricists who deny the objectivity of logic and think that reality is subjective to the individual. Voluntarists are Kantian rationalists who recognize an objective ethical framework out of the consistent application of logic and therefore deny some things, such as a state or coercion of any form. That's it. I've had it with this video, and no, nothing else of interest is said. It's the exact same shit of building up straw man arguments to then tear them down because he can't address the actual arguments at hand.